Welcome to Eclipse Horror Stories. If you're new here, this isn't just another horror channel. It's a community where we share the creepiest true stories, terrifying encounters, and mysteries that will keep you up at night. Every week, I bring you stories that feel so real, you'll question turning off the lights. If you love true horror stories, creepy forest encounters, and scary mysteries, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a night in the dark with us. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, the scariest ones are still to come. I've worked as a park ranger for more than 12 years, and in that time, I've seen plenty of strange things. People get lost, animals wander too close to the trails, storms roll in without warning. Most of it has an explanation, but there are a few stories I don't write down in the official reports, and tonight, when the rain is hammering against the windows of the ranger station, I find myself thinking about one of them. It began with a missing hiker. That's how most of the strange ones do. The call came in just after dawn. A woman in her mid-30s, staying at one of the rental cabins near the East Ridge, hadn't returned from her evening hike. Her husband said she set out around 6 to take photos of the sunset. He waited, thinking she lost track of time, but by midnight she still wasn't back. That's when he called us. I grabbed my gear, met up with 2 other rangers, and headed out toward the ridge. The sky was still heavy with fog from the night before, the kind that settles low to the ground and makes everything feel smaller, closer. The trails out there wind through old pine forest, the kind that blocks out most of the light. You can walk 50 feet from someone and lose sight of them completely. We found her car at the trailhead, camera bag on the front seat, keys in the ignition. That was the first thing that struck me. Most hikers I've searched for before leave their cars locked, gear with them. This looked like she had stepped out in a hurry. As we started up the trail, I kept glancing at the ground. At first, there were normal tracks, boots in the mud, steady pace. But half a mile in, the prints changed. The steps grew wider, like she was running. Then they stopped altogether in a patch of pine needles. No broken branches, no slide marks. Just gone. We spread out, calling her name, sweeping the forest in a pattern. An hour passed. Then another. Nothing. The woods were still, too still. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of distant water. Just silence, pressing down like a weight. Around noon, one of the other rangers waved me over. He'd found something wedged between 2 roots. Her camera. The strap was torn, the casing cracked, but the memory card was still inside. We didn't open it right away. We wanted to finish the search, but holding that camera in my hands, I felt a chill I couldn't shake. We hiked further into the ridge, and that's when I heard it. A voice. Faint. High. Like someone calling from a long way off. I froze, signaled for the others to stop. We listened. It came again, drifting through the trees. Help me. We moved fast, pushing through the brush, calling back. The voice led us deeper off trail, toward an area most visitors never go. The ground grew uneven, rocks slick with moss, branches clawing at our clothes. Every time we thought we were close, the voice moved further ahead. Always the same words, always just out of reach. After nearly an hour of chasing it, we broke into a small clearing. The voice stopped. Nothing moved except the fog curling low over the grass. In the middle of the clearing was a tree, older than the rest. Its bark split wide like a scar. On the ground beneath it lay her hiking boot, laces snapped clean through. We stood there in silence, the fog coiling around our legs, the forest watching us. One of the rangers muttered that we should head back and call for more help. But I couldn't move. Something about that tree, that clearing, felt wrong. Like we'd stepped into a place that wasn't ours. And that's when the voice came again, closer this time, whispering from behind the tree. The three of us froze when that whisper curled out from behind the tree. It was softer than before, almost like a breath brushing against the ear. We turned in unison, flashlights cutting through the fog, beams trembling across the bark. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice firm. Nothing answered. Only the wind stirred, carrying the damp smell of pine. One of the rangers, Alvarez, stepped closer, his boots crunching against the wet grass. He leaned around the side of the tree, then cursed under his breath. "What is it?" I asked, moving up beside him. He pointed. Carved deep into the trunk, hidden by the split in the bark, were letters. Not initials, not names. Just one word, repeated over and over again, gouged into the wood until it bled sap. Mine. There must have been 100 of them, stacked on top of each other, carved at different angles, as if someone had stood there for hours, days even, hacking the word into the tree until their hands gave out. Alvarez muttered a prayer under his breath. The third ranger, Miller, shook his head. "This isn't her. No way she did this." We circled the tree, scanning the ground for more signs. That's when I spotted it. A smear of mud leading into the underbrush, low to the ground, as if something had been dragged. We followed it only a few feet before it disappeared into moss. The forest seemed to grow darker the longer we lingered there. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see someone standing in the fog, but it was always empty. Still, the feeling of being watched dug into me like a thorn. Miller finally broke the silence. "We need to get back. Call in search and rescue. This isn't something we handle on our own." He wasn't wrong, but leaving felt impossible too. That voice, whatever it was, had led us here for a reason. I couldn't shake the thought that she was close, maybe even trapped, and if we turned back, we'd be abandoning her. But before I could argue, a sound cut through the trees. Not a voice this time. A knock. 3 sharp raps, like knuckles on wood. We all spun, lights flashing into the fog. Then again, from another direction. 3 knocks. "Woodpecker," Miller said quickly, his voice thin. But we all knew better. It was too steady, too deliberate. The knocks echoed around us, moving through the trees, circling the clearing. Each time they came, the fog seemed to shift, closing in tighter. Alvarez gripped his radio, whispering into it, but only static hissed back. Then, from somewhere deep in the trees, a scream tore through the silence. High, ragged, human. The kind of sound that makes your blood run cold. We bolted toward it without a word, crashing through brush, branches tearing at our arms. The scream came again, ahead of us, desperate. We pushed harder, lungs burning, until we stumbled into another clearing. It was empty. Only a torn jacket lay on the ground, snagged on a root. It matched the description of the missing women. I picked it up with shaking hands. The fabric was damp, but not from rain. Dark stains soaked the sleeves, metallic and unmistakable. Miller swore and backed away. Alvarez kept turning in circles, his light sweeping the tree line. She was just here. I heard her. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the forest around us was silent again, waiting, like it had swallowed the sound whole. Then came the whisper, right behind us, low and cold, brushing against the back of my neck. "Help me." I spun so fast my light cut wild patterns through the trees. Nothing. Just fog drifting like smoke and the black lines of trunks stretching in every direction. Alvarez was shaking, his radio still pressed to his mouth. Miller had gone pale, his boots crunching backward through the wet leaves. "It was right here," I said, though my throat felt dry. Alvarez's voice cracked. That wasn't her. You know that wasn't her. The words hung in the air heavier than the mist. Because he was right. There was no way a living, breathing woman had been standing inches from us, without a single branch snapping or leaf stirring. Whatever had whispered wasn't human. We regrouped, forcing ourselves to think. The trail markers were long behind us, and the fog made it impossible to see the stars. Miller wanted to turn back immediately, retrace our steps before night swallowed us whole. But when we checked our GPS units, both were dead. Batteries drained though they'd been fully charged that morning. Alvarez swore under his breath, tapping the screen uselessly. This doesn't happen. Not to both. Not out here. I tried the radio again. Only static. A deep, pulsing hiss that seemed to throb in my ear. For a second I thought I heard words underneath it, low and broken, like someone trying to speak through water. I clicked it off fast, stomach churning. We argued in whispers, as though raising our voices would invite something in. In the end, I made the call to keep moving. Not deeper, but sideways, following the slope downhill. If we could reach the creek, we could follow it back to the trailhead. At least, that was the hope. As we pushed through the undergrowth, the woods grew stranger. The trees twisted, their trunks too close together, branches tangled like skeletal arms. Every so often we'd find more carvings, deep gouges in the bark, repeating the same word we'd seen before. Mine. Always fresh, the edges wet with sap, as if someone had carved them minutes earlier. We tried not to look at them too long. After an hour of stumbling through brush, Miller stopped dead. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. We went still. At first, nothing. Then faintly, under the silence, the sound of running water. Relief surged in my chest. We were close to the creek. But as we drew closer, the sound shifted. It wasn't water. It was breathing. Slow, heavy, in and out, matching our steps. We stopped. The sound stopped. Alvarez's light jerked across the trees. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw something between them. A tall shape, too thin, head cocked sideways. The beam passed, and it was gone. We didn't speak after that. We just ran. Branches snapped against our arms. The ground slicked beneath our boots, but fear drove us faster. The forest seemed endless, looping back on itself, no matter which way we turned. Finally, gasping, we stumbled into another clearing. My heart sank. It was the same one. The scarred tree loomed before us. The word mine carved over and over like an open wound. Miller dropped to his knees, muttering, "We're going in circles. It won't let us out." Before I could answer, the knocks came again. 3 sharp raps, this time from the trunk itself. The sound echoed in my bones, hollow and final. Alvarez raised his light, hand trembling. The beam caught on the bark, and there, wedged in a fresh split, was her other boot. That was when we realized the tree wasn't just marked. It was keeping her. Alvarez cursed and stumbled back, nearly dropping his flashlight. Miller was still kneeling, whispering fast prayers into the dirt. I forced myself to step closer, even though my gut screamed not to. The boot was jammed deep into the split of the bark, the leather ripped like it had been dragged in, not left behind. I pressed a hand against the trunk. The bark should have been rough, solid, but it wasn't. It felt damp, like wet skin, and under my palm I could feel a pulse. Slow, steady, like the beat of a heart buried inside the wood. I yanked my hand back so fast my knuckles scraped. "What the hell is this?" Alvarez hissed. His light shook across the trunk, catching on the carvings that seemed to shimmer in the fog. The word mine wasn't just cut into the bark anymore. It looked like it was swelling, raw, the sap bleeding as though the tree itself had written it. Miller stood up, his face pale and wet with sweat. "We need to leave. Now. Forget the search, forget everything. Whatever this is, it doesn't want us here." I wanted to agree, but then I heard it again. The voice. Clearer now, as if the woman was standing just behind the tree. "Please help me." Against every shred of reason, I stepped closer. "Where are you?" I called, my voice shaking. Inside, the voice whispered back. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The sound hadn't come from behind the tree. It had come from within it, echoing out of the split like a cave. I swung my light into the opening. The crack seemed deeper than before, wide enough to glimpse darkness inside. And just for a heartbeat, I swore I saw an eye staring back. Not human. Too large, too dark, unblinking. Alvarez grabbed my arm and yanked me back. "Don't look at it," he barked, panic sharp in his voice. The tree groaned then, a low sound that shook the ground under our boots. Sap oozed from the carvings like blood, thick and dark, dripping onto the roots. The smell hit us all at once, sweet, rotten, like meat left in the sun. Then the knocks started again. Not around us this time. From inside the trunk. 3 sharp bangs that rattled through my bones. And after the third, the split widened with a crack, bark peeling like skin tearing open. Something moved inside. Miller screamed, firing his flare gun into the opening. The burst of light filled the clearing with red glow, and for one terrible instant we saw it. A pale face pressed against the inside of the wood, stretched too thin, mouth open in a silent scream. Eyes that weren't eyes, black pits with no bottom. And surrounding it, dozens of hands, gray, twisted, clawing at the split as if trying to push their way out. The flares sputtered and died, plunging us back into the fog. Silence fell again, except for Miller's ragged breaths. "We're leaving," I said, my voice rough. Now. We turned to run, but the forest shifted. The trees seemed to close ranks, branches lowering like bars, roots twisting out of the ground to block our path. Every direction we tried, the trail vanished into walls of black trunks. The voice came again, soft, coaxing, from every side at once. "Stay with me." Alvarez fired his flashlight wildly, but the beams bent, swallowed by the fog. Miller had dropped to the ground, clutching his head, whispering, "We're already dead." I grabbed his arm, forcing him up, even though my own legs felt like stone. "No, not yet." And then, from somewhere deep inside the tree, something laughed. The laugh slid through the clearing like smoke, low and broken, as if it came from a mouth that didn't quite know how to form sound. My skin crawled. Alvarez gripped my sleeve so hard his nails dug in. Miller was trembling, his eyes wide but unfocused, like he was seeing something I couldn't. "Move," I hissed, dragging them toward a gap between 2 trees. I didn't care if it was the wrong direction. Staying here wasn't an option. We forced our way through, branches snapping against our faces, roots catching at our boots. The fog seemed thicker now, coiling low around our legs, heavy enough to trip us. Behind us, wood cracked, not like branches breaking, like a trunk splitting apart. The sound followed us as we stumbled downhill, echoing, each snap closer than the last. "Don't look back," I told them, though I wanted to more than anything. Alvarez did. He gasped, and his light slipped from his hand, vanishing into the fog. "It's coming." I grabbed his arm before he froze, yanking him forward. The forest was alive with sound now, knocks on every side, branches creaking like they were straining under some enormous weight, whispers weaving between the trees. My name, Alvarez's, Miller's, each whispered like a promise, soft and inviting. We broke into another clearing, smaller this time. Dead leaves carpeted the ground, piled high as if they'd been gathering for years. In the center stood a wooden post, old and gray, tied with strips of cloth. Ranger tape. My breath caught. These were markers from a search and rescue years back. The missing hiker hadn't been the first. Miller stumbled toward the post, muttering, "They're all here. All of them." His voice cracked as he kicked through the leaves. A skull rolled out, dirt clinging to its hollow sockets. Alvarez swore and shoved him back. "Stop. Don't touch it." But it was too late. The ground shifted, leaves spilling away to reveal more bones. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all tangled together beneath the clearing like a nest. The air turned colder. My breath fogged, and from the tree line, something stepped out. At first it looked human, a woman, barefoot, clothes torn, hair plastered to her face. The missing hiker. Relief surged up in me, but then she lifted her head. Her eyes were black, bottomless, and her mouth stretched too wide, splitting into a grin that didn't belong on any living face. Alvarez screamed and raised his flare gun, but before he could fire, she moved. Not ran, moved. One moment she was across the clearing, the next she was inches from him, her face lit by his trembling beam. She whispered, "Mine." I slammed into him, knocking the flare gun up. The shot burst into the air, light exploding red across the clearing. The figure flinched, face twisting, then melted back into the fog as if the light burned her. The flare sputtered out. Darkness pressed in again. Miller was on the ground, rocking back and forth, muttering nonsense. Alvarez gripped my arm, his face slick with sweat. "We can't fight it. You saw what it is. We're not leaving." But I wasn't ready to give up. I grabbed the flare gun from him, fumbling another round in. "Light hurts it," I said, forcing my voice steady. "That's all we need. Light." The forest groaned around us, as if it had heard me. And then, from every direction, the voices rose again. Not whispers this time. Screams. Dozens of them, crying out all at once. Men, women, children. A chorus of pain that rattled through my skull. The ground trembled. Roots writhed under the leaves, curling like snakes. One of them wrapped around Miller's leg and yanked. He didn't even scream, just looked at me with empty eyes as the forest pulled him under. Miller was gone in seconds. The roots dragged him beneath the carpet of leaves as if the earth itself had swallowed him whole. Alvarez lunged forward, clawing at the ground, but I yanked him back. "He's gone," I shouted, though the words tasted like ash. The clearing was alive now. The soil heaved, the roots twisting and snapping like muscles flexing under the ground. Bones shifted in the piles around us, clattering together as if stirred by some unseen hand. The screams had faded into low moans, circling us like a chant. Alvarez gripped my arm so tightly my skin burned. "We're next," he whispered. I lifted the flare gun, scanning the tree line. The fog swirled, shapes forming and fading. Faces, too many faces, staring back. Some looked human, some didn't, but all shared those same black pits for eyes. "We have to move," I said, though there was nowhere to go. The ground split open at the far end of the clearing. A trunk erupted upward, twisting, groaning as it grew taller in seconds. It wasn't a tree, not really. Its bark shifted like flesh, the carvings of mine glowing faint in the dark. And in its center, where the split gaped wide, a figure pressed against the wood. The woman, the missing hiker. Her face warped, her hands stretched outward, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Alvarez shook his head. "It's using her. It's using all of them." The thing leaned forward, its branches stretching like arms. Roots lashed toward us, cracking through the bones. I fired the flare gun straight into its opening. The blast hit dead center, flooding the clearing in blinding red. The figure inside shrieked, not with her voice, but with something deeper, something that rattled my teeth. The roots recoiled, hissing like snakes burned alive. The trunk shuddered, the word mine flaring brighter, then dimming. For a second, I thought we'd heard it. But then Alvarez screamed. A root had wrapped around his leg, pulling him toward the growing tree. He clawed at the ground, his flashlight spinning away, his fingers digging furrows in the dirt. "Help me," he cried, voice ragged. I grabbed his arms, leaning back with everything I had, but the forest was stronger. Inch by inch, it dragged him closer to the split in the bark. I saw the face inside twitch, its mouth stretching wider, ready to swallow him whole. I jammed the flare gun against the root, holding him, and fired. The blast tore through it, spraying burning sap across the ground. The root writhed and recoiled, and Alvarez scrambled free, his leg bleeding but intact. We staggered up together, gasping. "We can't stop it," he panted. "We can only run." He was right. With my last flare loaded, I aimed it skyward and fired. The red light burst above us, briefly cutting through the fog. For a moment, the forest froze, shadows recoiling, faces retreating into the trees. It was all the time we had. "Go!" I shouted. We plunged into the darkness, dodging roots that whipped at our legs. The screams followed, crashing through the trees, voices clawing at our ears. Every step felt like the ground was trying to suck us down, but somehow we kept moving. At last, through the fog, I saw it aglow. Not from the forest, but from the trailhead lamps. The station. Civilization. We broke through the last wall of trees, stumbling onto the gravel path. Behind us, the sounds cut off all at once. The forest went silent. I collapsed to my knees, Alvarez falling beside me. The woods loomed behind us, dark and still, as if nothing had happened at all. But the word was burned into my head, louder than ever. Mine. By the time we staggered into the ranger station, dawn was already bleeding through the clouds. My uniform was shredded, Alvarez's leg was wrapped in whatever bandages we could find, and neither of us had spoken more than a few words since the woods spat us out. The others at the station swarmed us with questions, but I couldn't answer. What could I say? That the forest itself had tried to claim us? That something inside the trees was carving words into bark and dragging people beneath the soil? We filed an official report, of course. Missing hiker. Search aborted due to dangerous terrain. That was all I could write. Alvarez refused to put anything down. He just stared at the desk, his face hollow, repeating under his breath that Miller hadn't made it out. The supervisors said they'd send another team in daylight to recover him, but Alvarez and I both knew there'd be nothing to find. The forest doesn't give back what it takes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the split in the bark and the face pressed against it. I heard the voices whispering from the fog. I felt the ground shifting under me, roots twitching like muscle. And underneath all of it was that word, seared into my head like it had been carved into me the same way it had been carved into the trees. Mine. 3 days later, the official search ended. They didn't find the woman. They didn't find Miller. The report said they were presumed lost to the elements. Closed case. Families notified. But it wasn't closed for me. I kept the woman's camera, the one we'd found near the roots. No one asked about it. Late one night, I sat alone at the station and finally slid the card into my laptop. The first dozen photos were normal. Sunset through the pines, her smiling in front of a ridge, the trail winding into the trees. But the last few, the light was dim, shaky, like she was running while she snapped them. Faces blurred in the fog, half-formed, too tall, too thin. Carvings glowing faint on tree trunks. One photo showed her booed, torn, dangling from a root. The final picture froze me cold. It was the tree, the same scarred trunk. But in this image, the split was wide open, and pressed against the inside was her own face, twisted and screaming. I slammed the laptop shut, while rising in my throat. I thought about destroying the card, burning it, anything. But a part of me couldn't, because I knew what it meant. Alvarez quit a week later. He didn't give a reason, just pack his locker and leave. I never saw him again. Sometimes I wonder if he hears it too. The voice, the knocking, the word repeating in the back of his skull like a heartbeat. I still patrol these woods. It's my job, and I can't seem to leave. But I don't go near that ridge anymore. I tell new rangers to avoid it, say the trails are unstable. It's a lie, but a useful one. And when people ask me about the missing hikers, I repeat the official story. But on nights like this, when the fog settles low and the forest grows too quiet, I hear it again. Knocks against the glass of the station window. A whisper drifting through the static of the radio. Sometimes it calls my name. Sometimes it just says the word. Mine. And deep down, I know one night I won't be able to ignore it.